Hello and welcome to my presentation about starchy vegetables. Are they good or bad? I'm Joel Keenan and this is my week 6 PowerPoint presentation in the Research Methods class at the UNE Applied Nutrition Master's Program. We know that heart disease has been the leading cause of death in the United States for just over a century, and that problem is due entirely to food. It didn't always used to be that way. Our ancestors, the healthiest people who ever lived, hunter-gatherers, ate a diet low in saturated fat, very high in fiber because they ate abundant fruit and vegetables, and they had virtually no atherosclerosis or heart disease. Compared with now, the diet has changed substantially, as we know. It's rich in total and saturated fat and refined and processed carbohydrates. And fruit and vegetable intake occupies a really small portion of our total daily caloric intake. If you look at this pie chart, you can see it's just about 11% combined fruit and vegetable intake for the standard American diet. Add to that whole grains, and you're still at 15%, with the vast majority of our diet consisting of processed foods and animal products. So we've known for decades, and the USDA has advised for decades, that we should substantially increase our vegetable intake, but there is some dispute about what kinds of vegetables we ought to be eating. Some studies suggest that starchy vegetables are not as healthy for us as low starch or non-starchy vegetables. We have a lot of diets to choose from. Two of the heart healthiest are DASH and Mediterranean. But as you know, several other diets advise a low carbohydrate intake, keto, paleo, Atkins, etc. And that's in part because of the argument that starch, including starchy vegetables, is atherogenic or promotes insulin resistance or can promote heart disease. So there is literature to that effect, and some studies have suggested there's a correlation between starchy vegetable intake and the incidence of diabetes, of heart disease, and of mortality. Conversely, other studies, such as this 2021 cross-sectional observational study, suggest that healthy starchy carbohydrate intake correlates with lower fasting glucose levels. So I'm interested in this research question. Compared to non-starchy vegetables, are starchy vegetables healthy? And to sort that out, I'm interested in separating what may be considered starchy vegetables with one particular starchy vegetable, very common in the modern American diet, white potatoes. To that end, I've designed an experimental crossover study, 6 months in all, with 2 month periods, first of a DASH diet with mostly non-starchy vegetables, followed by a 2 month washout period, followed by 2 months of a DASH diet with mostly starchy vegetables. Both of those arms of the study involving low starch and high starch vegetables will have excluded from them white potatoes in any form, including French fries. The indices that will be measured include weight, waist circumference, glycohemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of glucose over the prior 90 days, fasting lipids, and fasting glucose, in an effort to see what effect these diets have on body mass index, on insulin resistance, and on hyperlipidemia. The study will begin with a convenient sample and online and newspaper advertisements to recruit participants. It will occur in Maine between October and March, when physical activity is less likely to be a confounding factor. Eligible participants will include adults with a BMI between 25 and 30. So I'm seeking out people who are overweight but not obese. Men and women will be equally randomized to each group. In the study design, the low-starch vegetable diet will include mostly broccoli, cauliflower, spinach, leafy greens, celery, tomatoes, Brussels sprouts, eggplant, arugula, asparagus, cabbage, onions, and mushrooms. And the high-starch arm will include mostly sweet potatoes, lentils, kidney beans, chickpeas, butternut squash, acorn squash, green peas, beets, carrots, turnips, and parsnips. But as I noted, both diets will exclude white potatoes in any form. There will be menus for lunch and dinner for each type of diet, and we'll ask participants to keep current a chronometer log of what's eaten daily. That as well will allow us to record daily exercise, and daily calories consumed and expended will be calculated by the chronometer. I conducted a fixed effects omnibus one-way ANOVA to determine the optimal sample size. And based on that, 131 participants in each arm will be needed for an alpha level of 0.05, an effect size of 0.25, and a power of 0.90, anticipating a 25% dropout rate. My continuous variables will be the ones I noted: weight, waist circumference, A1C, fasting lipids, and glucose. And I'm hoping that with this research design, I can help discern between the effect of healthy starchy vegetables, such as those I mentioned that will be included in the starchy vegetable arm of this intervention, and contrast the effect of those vegetables with that of refined and processed carbohydrates and the starch found in white potatoes. That is, higher glycemic index and higher glycemic load starch that I think is often confused with the influence of healthy starchy vegetables. I'm hoping that if we can find an ameliorative aspect or benefit to healthy starchy vegetables, that will lend support to the use of whole food plant-based diets, which have been shown to decrease mortality and which have ecological benefits in terms of the amount of arable land required to feed a certain number of people compared with comparable animal-based diets. Limitations of this study include selection and recall bias. There will be difficulty quantifying the influence of confounding factors like physical activity. Results may not reach statistical or clinical significance. That's possible. That said, I hope you found this helpful and interesting. I hope you think this study might be interesting to embark on, and thank you so much for watching my presentation.